Howdy folks, welcome back to another Out of Spec Renew video, and today we've got an F-150 Lightning in with some battery issues. Let's get into it. Alright, so like I mentioned there in the intro, we've got a Lightning here with some battery issues. Now, this is actually a 2022 model. It actually belongs to an electrical contractor here not too far away, and one of their employees puts about 140 miles on it a day. It's got over 140,000 miles on it now. And I actually first diagnosed this for them, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, something like that. And it was immediately obvious that it had a cell voltage imbalance in module number 1. And I'm guessing it's got a week short because it's actually gotten progressively worse in the time since they first brought it in. Originally, when they brought it, it would only charge to 85%. Now it only charges to about 50%, and it won't charge any further than that. So, I've actually got my Autel plugged into it there, and we've got the tool right here on this guy right here, and this is what we're communicating with the battery. So here you can see in module 1, we've got a 442 millivolt imbalance. And here, if I go to cell status, you can see it represented in graphical form. So you can see our cell 10, I believe it's cell 10. Yeah, so cell 10 is much lower than the rest. And you can see it's actually telling us that the state of charge of cell 10 is at 38%, where the rest of the pack is all at 90, 91%. So this is kind of a known issue that can happen on Lightnings that I've heard about. Most of these trucks are low enough mileage that they're still under warranty. But obviously with this one being at 140,000 miles, it's well over the mileage threshold to qualify for a warranty replacement. So we're going to be actually swapping the pack out on this. In theory, what it might be possible to do would be to swap out module 1 with a good condition module. Now, of course, there's some challenges to overcome with that. This being a higher mileage truck, it's going to have a bit of degradation. You don't want to swap in like a brand new module that's got more capacity than the rest, because then you'll just end up with another imbalance issue. I can't find anybody that actually parts these packs out and sells modules individually, so trying to source a used module proves to be extremely difficult for these. There just isn't really a market for that yet. I'm sure with time, as more of these start to come off warranty, maybe a market will open up for that. But at this time, there just isn't really an option. But this is a standard range truck. Don't know if I mentioned that before, but this is only the 98 kilowatt hour version. Our replacement pack that we're going to put in is actually the extended range 131 kilowatt hour. I think I got the number right there. So we're going to be swapping in the big pack to this thing. I'm actually still waiting for it to arrive, but it should be showing up here later today. And I wasn't totally clear on whether that was going to be directly possible, because there's no documentation from Ford that mentions anything about supporting the pack swap to go from a standard range to an extended range. But there is some activity on some of the F-150 Lightning forums, and there's at least one person that's done it. And they were able to just swap the pack in with no issues. It actually ended up not even requiring any programming. So fingers crossed that's what happens here. We can just swap it in and it just works. Worst case scenario, we might need to do some programming or coding on it, but supposedly it's just a bolt-in swap with no programming required. So that would be pretty cool if it proves to be the case. And yeah. So I think at this point, probably going to go ahead and get this thing lifted up and start with the process of disassembly in order to prep to pull the old pack out. Okay, so as per usual, our very first step before doing anything for the high voltage system is going to be to disconnect everything electrically. So our 12-volt battery lives right back here behind this panel. So to get to that, we just pull the panel up like so, and it just pops out. And then I'm just going to reach back here, and we're going to undo the negative terminal on the 12-volt battery here. Now, of course, before doing this, I want to make sure the truck's unlocked. Everything's sorted in terms of that, which it is. I'm just going to wiggle that loose. If I could reach far enough. There we go. So our 12-volt system is disconnected. Now we just need to disconnect our high voltage. All right, so our high voltage disconnect on the Lightning is basically kind of under this panel. It's actually just right back here behind the front strut. Let me actually reposition the camera so that you guys can actually see it. All right, so our high voltage disconnect on the Lightning is just this little green connector right here behind the front strut. So to disconnect that, we just got to pull the red tab. Maybe. Might need a tool to get that apart. There we go. So you pull the red tab out, and then we just push down on this tab, and we should be able to separate the connector from the two halves. Maybe. There we go. So we've got it disconnected, and you can see now it says off. And then I'm just going to put a little cable tie in there. That way it can't accidentally get plugged back in. And there we go. So our high voltage system is now de-energized, and we've got no risk of contactors closing or anything when we start to take this thing apart. All right, so now we're at a point where we're ready to raise this thing up, and we can start prepping underneath to drop the battery. Okay, so with the truck up in the air here, our next step is to remove all of our big skid plates. So we've got a skid plate here at the front that kind of protects all the connectors and stuff on the front of the battery. There's actually a big gap here in the side. I've actually heard of at least one case, there's probably others, where someone ran over a tree branch and it actually got in there and broke one of the cooling hoses. So it'd be a good idea, I think, if this was more enclosed, but anyway. I digress. We've got to remove this skid plate, which just has 4 bolts that hold it in, 2 at the front, 1 on either side towards the rear. There's another big skid plate on the back that protects the rear motor. And then in the sort of center portion of the battery pack, we've got 3 additional skid plates. These are kind of just for the battery pack itself, and they're actually tucked up underneath the main frame for the battery. They shouldn't really have to come off to remove the battery pack from the truck, but I'm not 100% sure that our replacement battery is going to have those attached. So I'm going to pull them off just in case we need to reuse them. And yeah, so time to disassemble this thing. Very nice. Apparently this has retainers that hold it in place, which is awesome. I didn't want it to fall on my head. Now moving back, we've got our 3 battery skid plates. Like I said, they don't really have to come off to remove the pack, but I'm not sure if we're going to have to reuse them with a replacement or not. I assume it's probably going to have these on it, but I don't want to end up finding out that it doesn't when it comes time to put it in, because then obviously these would be trapped under this battery on whatever pallet we have it on. So we're just going to zip all these off. And lastly, the biggest and heaviest of all the drive units, or of all the skid plates, is going to be this one that protects the rear drive unit. So it's just got 4 large bolts in it. It appears, is this a, oh yeah, that's just a foam block. So these little plastic clips hold a little foam acoustic block to this thing. It's probably a dampener so that this thing doesn't make like pinging noises, because this is just a big, it's just a big sheet metal thing. So if it didn't have that on it, it would probably make, you know, sort of loud noises if anything hit it. Okay, so that's those 2 bolts. I'm just going to kind of support this. Probably should use a jack, but that's all right. I've got it. I'm just going to drop the bolts. And there we go. That is a stinking heavy skid plate. They really want to protect that motor with this thing. This has got to be, looks like it's at least 1/8 inch thick steel. Awesome. All right, that's going over here. So our next step here is going to be disconnecting everything from the front of the battery pack. So we've got 2 coolant lines, an inlet and an outlet. We've got 4 high voltage connections, and then we've got 1 low voltage connection. There's also 1 ground strap located on the rear of the battery that we're going to have to undo as well. And then all of these harnesses are attached to this metal bar up here. This is actually bolted on to the top of the battery right here on the front. So we have to remove that bar since the low voltage harness and everything's attached to it. Either that, or I guess we could unclip the harness from the bar, but I think it's just going to be easier to take out the 3 fasteners that attach the bar to the battery. But first I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the coolant lines. I've got some coolant hose clamps here so that we can minimize our coolant loss and hopefully not have to purge quite as much air out of the system. So I'm just going to go ahead and clamp both of those off. If I can get that on there. There we go. So those are both on. You can't see it, but just out of frame here I've got a jug here to catch the coolant that does leak out. And I believe these just have a little locking tab that we should be able to pop off like so. So that little tab just comes off of there. And then we should be able to just pull on the hose. And there we go. So minimal coolant loss out of that, although it is actually dripping a bit. So maybe I need to tighten up my clamp some. So that was easy. Now let's go ahead and disconnect everything. So we've got our low voltage connector here. So we've got this red tab that should pop out just like so. And then we've got to push on that little black tab in order to flip the gray locking lever out. And I'm just going to give it a gentle little wiggle to help it. It's got a little bit of dirt trapped in it. All these have a tab that just slides to one side. And this one has a blue tab that pops out that way. So these ones, we should be able to just pull the black tab out. Oh, we probably need to disconnect the retainers on those to get them unplugged. They've got sort of a strain relief thing on these that's bolted to this bar that makes it a little too difficult to get them unplugged. So we'll just zip those out. All right, there we go. Now we should be able to unplug that a little bit easier. I believe this connector goes to the rear motor, because yeah, it goes around the side and goes straight to the back. So I assume that goes to the rear motor, and I believe the inverter for these for doing AC power is also in the rear, so it'll probably go to that. This is just a base XLT with the standard range pack, so it doesn't have the 50 amp 240 volt output, but it does have all the 120 volt outlets. All right, I'll pop this one loose as well. And last but not least, we got the giant one here, which is for the charge port, I believe. I don't know what is holding us up on that one. Oh look, we got a leaf trapped in there. I don't want to break the lever off on that. It's putting up some resistance. Why is it putting up some resistance? Maybe I need to try and give the connector an assist. I assume the blades on this probably have a lot of friction to overcome. Yeah, there we go. It just needed a little bit of extra persuasion to help it release. Just like so. That is a big connector right there. Okay, so we've got that undone, we've got these undone. I might try to see if I can maybe zip tie all these back out of the way, where they hopefully won't get stuck to anything, because I don't want them to get caught on the battery and get damaged when we're either dropping this one out or pulling the new one in. So I might try and just pull those back a bit. Our last connector here is this one. That pulled off way easier than I thought. And yeah, let me just grab some cable ties to get all those out of the way. All right, everything's all disconnected here. I got our bar unbolted on top. I also undid this little ground connection that goes right here on the very back of the battery. And that should be everything electrically on this thing that needs to be disconnected. I think at this point we're ready to go ahead and unbolt this thing and drop it out of the truck. All right, so we're in the home stretch now. All that's left to do is just to unbolt the battery from the truck. We just have 4 bolts on each side. So we've got one here, another one there, and then we've got 2 more further back there. So a total of 8 bolts that hold this battery in, and then it should just drop right out. My clearance on the lift arms is pretty tight because the battery is almost right up against the frame rails. So I did a check on it, and I'm 99% sure I've got enough clearance, but we'll take it slow when we're going up just to make sure that we don't catch on the lift arms. But other than that, I think we're solid here. All right, so we're fully unbolted now, and at this point, it's time to bring her up. So I'm just going to take it nice and slow. Make sure we're not catching on anything. Especially for the lift arms here at the rear, because they're pretty close. This one's good. And that one's good. All right, so we've got just enough clearance to be able to fit. Let's see, we do have a little bit of a flange there that sticks out. So let me just make sure this side should be fine. The other side might be close, but it looks like it will also clear. Okay, and we are out. I'm limited on the height that I can actually lift this thing because the truck will actually hit the top bar on the lift. So I didn't anticipate there being a clearance issue between the lift arms and the top of the battery. Can we actually fit out past the lower control arms? I think that we can, but it's going to be pretty close. I might have to go up. So right now I'm up, I think, as high as I can go before hitting the limit stop. I'm not actually resting on the locks on the lift, but that gives me just enough clearance that I should be able to get the battery out of here without a problem. Okay, I've got, like I said there, I've got just enough clearance to be able to fit. Oh yeah. I just need to push it from the back here to make sure that we keep it in alignment, because it needs to be steered just a touch. And there we go. So that's definitely the biggest battery pack that I've ever handled on something like this. So big, whatever. I think the nominal capacity on this is 104. Oh, 107.6 is the rated capacity. Or nominal capacity. Their actual usable capacity on this was 98 point something. I think 98.8. Obviously, the replacement battery is going to be the 131 kilowatt hour usable, so that'll be even bigger than this one. Physical size is the same, just has more cells in it. They actually run a different series count. This is a 90S pack. It uses it uses 9 basically identical 10S modules. The long-range pack uses 9 modules, but I think that 8 of them are 11S and then 1 is 9S. Should be a total of 96S on that one. And then it's got more cells in parallel as well, of course, in each of the modules. So I think this has 4 cells in parallel per module. The big one uses 5 cells in parallel. But that's this thing out. Hopefully the replacement pack should be showing up here shortly, and we'll be able to get that swapped in. Alrighty, folks, it's a few days later. We've got our old pack here, still out of the truck. The replacement pack actually didn't end up showing the day that I expected it to. It ended up showing up the day afterwards. And unfortunately, it's got some damage. So our main high voltage connector for the charge port is damaged. And we've also got some damage to this one that supplies some of the auxiliary functions. You can see it's busted there kind of on the top, and it's got a big chunk missing out of the bottom. And then this motor connector here is also a bit damaged. So it looks like actually the only two connectors that aren't damaged is our low voltage data connector and this motor connector there. I wanted to check with the dismantler first before I went ahead and tried to do any repairs to this. Just make sure they weren't going to void any kind of warranty on it. But what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to open up both packs and I'm just going to swap over our good connectors from the old pack to the replacement. But yeah, anyways, this is the replacement pack. It's our big, it's 143.4 kilowatt hours nominal. The usable on these is 131. So yeah, should be pretty simple to get the lids opened up on these. I guess the only other damage to the replacement pack here was just a little bit of these little lifting tabs that stick out on the lid. That one got a little bit crunched, and I think this one on the back got a little bit crunched, but that's kind of purely cosmetic. I suppose that we could swap the lid over from the old one, but we actually, I won't do that because I want to have the correct part numbers and stuff on it. So this isn't anything that's going to affect the sealing capability of the lid, and it's not structural. It's just there to assist in lifting the lid off if it ever has to be opened up. So yeah, just a little bit of cosmetic damage to those, but not a big deal. So let's go ahead and get these opened up. I think I'm just going to start on our old one, since that can be sort of our experimental pack, and we can work on getting that stuff swapped out. Okay, so I've got all the fasteners pulled out of the lid. We should be able to lift this thing off. It looks like we have a couple of sort of little alignment studs. There's one on each opposing corner, so this one's actually got a slot. The one on that end is a close tolerance hole, but we should be able to just lift this up and get it to disconnect. Oh yeah, this should be easy to swap that stuff out. Okay, and this lid just has a gasket on it, so this lid's not glued on or anything. It's really nice when these battery packs are assembled like this, because it makes it real easy to open it up to do any kind of servicing stuff. So I'm going to figure out how to get this whole lid off. Maybe I'll try and just stick a 2x4 on here to support this end of the lid. Something like that. That way it doesn't get caught on that stud. And then I'm going to lift the corner over there, and I think I'm going to try and just flip the lid over to the side, and that way I can just, grab it and pull the whole thing off. All right, so we've got our opposing corner stud right there. That's fully off, and I'm just going to pivot this like so, and try not to let this slip too far like that. And there we go. The whole pack is opened up. So I can just pull the lid off, will it balance on its own? Doesn't look like it, so I'll lean it up against the garage there. And sweet, there we go. So the whole pack is opened up, and like I was talking about before, we've got 11 9S modules in here. The other pack will have kind of a different layout as far as the way all the modules are set up. That one actually uses completely different modules than the standard range pack. Like I said, these are all identical modules. They're all 9S, and there's 10 of them in total, so you get 90 cells in series. Or wait, sorry, I have that wrong. It's 10S modules, and there's 9 of them, right? So 9 10S modules. I had that backwards. The pack over there, I believe that has 8 11S modules, and then 1 8S module, and it should be 96S. So yeah, anyway, totally different layouts. Same cells, but different number of cells in series and in parallel for each module. These are 4 cells in parallel for each series group. That one has 5 cells in parallel for each series group. So the modules are not interchangeable between the two of them. The cells are the same, but the modules, the way that they're assembled, are not. But let's bring you guys in for a closer look here. And so the way our connectors are set up here, so our auxiliary connector, which is one of the ones that's broken on our replacement pack, has got a harness here. So we'll have to swap this harness over, I suppose, unless it can be unplugged from the back side of the connector there. which I can't quite see, but I'm going to assume we're going to have to swap that, which it's just got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connectors on it. So that's easily swappable. And then these ones, I'll just bolt on to these bus bars in here. So that should be easy to swap out as well. We've got our charge port connector, so you can see where that goes. And then this other motor connector here also just attaches to some bus bars in here. So it looks like, oh, actually, that goes further in. Oh! We might actually be able to swap this out a different way. So this whole front section that these connectors are all attached to is actually a separate piece. So you can see we've got these bolts on the inside. So that's what attaches this piece to the actual battery enclosure. So that's actually probably going to be the easiest way to do this, because you can see we've actually got a bus bar that runs through the backside here. So I think the easiest solution is just going to be to swap out this whole assembly from this pack to that pack. That stuff is all physically the same. The enclosures are the same. So yeah, I guess we just need to remove the bus bars here and disconnect this harness. And then we should be able to swap that whole thing out. I guess we've got a low voltage harness connector here as well, right there. But that's it. Should be pretty simple. All right, so we're getting ready to disassemble here. I'm just going to do a quick sanity check. So we should not have any voltage on any of these bus bars because the contactors are open. So our positive side of the battery is this bus bar here. Our negative side of the battery is this bus bar here. So those should be live, but anything past that shouldn't be. So if we go, say, positive and negative there, as you can see, we've got no voltage present. So same goes for any of these bus bars here. Positive side, nothing. Negative side, we get a slight jump just from some capacitance, but there's nothing present there. So I am still going to use insulated tools on this, of course, but there's nothing here that we're going to be touching that has live high voltage. These bus bars here, like I said, those ones do have live high voltage. They're actually pretty well protected. You can't even poke a multimeter in there without opening the covers up. So we're not going too crazy here, but I want to go ahead and start getting that disassembled here. All right, for now I'm just going to get these started. This is just a little support bracket that happens to be grounded as well. I'm going to grab a pair of pliers here real quick. Like I said, there's no actual high voltage present here, but I'm just going to be a little bit cautious because it's always good to be careful when working on live battery stuff, even though this isn't the live side. We're just going to grab that. How do we want to grab that? How about like that? Okay. And then we've got another bus bar here. So these two bus bars are just for the charging side. Okay. We'll grab that one as well. I'm just going to grab this little plastic part to support it. Bingo. All right. And then for our powertrain side, we've got this bus bar here and that bus bar there. So it looks like the best way to do this is going to be just to disconnect this one. We can't really remove this bus bar, but then this side we will be able to remove it. Or at least this intermediate bus bar. Don't know why they chose to do it this way, but that's just how it is, I guess. All right. We can go ahead and pull this bus bar out. Just like so. All right, and then we just have a few connectors to get undone here. How does that one come apart? It looks like we just push there, and that should unplug. Yep, that was easy. And it does have this sort of little Christmas tree clip holder thing. And it looks like we got a couple more down there that we'll have to undo. That's for our low voltage connector. And then for our high voltage auxiliary connection down here, that does not unplug on the inside there, so we've got to remove this whole harness. So we'll unplug these connectors, which is all going to be, is this interlock loop or contactor control? It must be contactor control coming from the low voltage side. Yeah, most of these connectors are low voltage except for that one, which is a high voltage. And there we go. We've just got some clips that we need to remove. So I'll grab a clip tool, pop all that stuff out, and then we should be able to remove the whole front header assembly. Okay, so we've got all of our harnesses unclipped. The only thing that's left to do is to go ahead and just unbolt our front header here. So we just have a bunch of, they're probably M6 bolts with 10mm heads. So I'm just going to zip all these off with an electric ratchet here, at least in the places where I can fit it. There's a few places where I can't quite fit the tool in, and I'll probably have to undo them by hand. But yeah, I'll get what I can here, and we'll just get all these zipped out. All right, so all of our fasteners on our front header here are removed. There's a couple of clips that just keep it kind of centered in here, and we do have this one bus bar that we kind of have to lift up on. But I should be able to basically just give it a little tug and a wiggle, and the whole thing should basically just pop loose. Except I appear to be stuck on something. Oh. There's one more clip that I missed on this harness down here. So let me push that back into place. Come on. There we go. Now we can pull this out. Just guide this harness through. And there we go. So our whole header is removed. It just unbolts off of there. So now we'll just repeat the same process on our replacement pack, and we'll swap this one on. All right, I've got the lid off of our replacement pack, and I just wanted to show you guys the differences between these two. So you can see we've got one smaller module here at the front. That's going to be our smaller 8S module. And then these bigger modules are all going to be the 11S. And you can see there's, I don't know, maybe about 2 inches of space on either side from the module to the edge of the pack enclosure, where on the standard range pack, we've got probably more like maybe 6 or 7 inches on each side. So you can see just how much bigger the modules are on this, just because they have so many more cells. So these are 5 cells in parallel for each series group. So anyway, yeah, kind of fun stuff. But yeah, let's go ahead and start getting this thing together, and then we should be good to go. All right, so I should have done this first thing, but I decided before I go too crazy, I wanted to plug in the Autel to this thing and make sure everything looks good. And it does look like we are doing great. Only 15 millivolt differential imbalance. Looks like this thing's been stored at about 40% state of charge, which is awesome. All of our modules look like they're nicely in balance. So I think we are good to go on this thing. I'm going to go ahead and get our front header here swapped out with our old one, and then we should be able to get started on actually installing this thing in the truck. All right, our connector header is installed on the front of the replacement pack. I also went ahead and cleaned up sealing surface around the edges. And yeah, at this point we're ready to go ahead and throw the lid back on. I've got to transfer this to a different pallet, and then we should be able to go ahead and get started on reinstalling it back into the truck here. All right, so we've got the pack set up on the table here, ready to go. As you can see, of course, I put the lid on. I got it transferred to this other pallet that fits on our table here a bit better. And of course, we have all of our connectors swapped over. So now we've just got to roll it under the truck here and get it in position, bolt it into place. Then we can start plugging everything back in, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we should be able to just power it up. And in theory, this should work with no programming or coding required. At least that's the theory. So let's get to it. All right, so I've got the battery roughly positioned here under the truck. I think I'm pretty dang close to lined up where it needs to be. I'm probably going to have to do some fine tuning, but I think at this point we're ready to just bring it down and start getting everything lined up. So I just realized I did make one mistake. So the truck is not totally level on the lift, and when I pulled the old battery out, I had to put a block of wood underneath the front end so that the pack was tilted up slightly in the front, and I forgot to do that for this. So I've got it pretty much lined up where it needs to go, but the rear is contacting before the front, and the front still has a long ways to go. So I might try to see if I can get my transmission jack under the front end of the pack here. I don't know if it'll quite go low enough, but hopefully I can jack the front end of the pack up and we can get it into position that way. All right, so I've got the pack basically all the way in and aligned, but I realized I've made a slight mistake. When I pulled the old pack out, the truck does not sit quite level on the lift front to back. The front is actually a bit higher than the rear. So when I pulled the old pack out, I had to use a block of wood under the pallet so that the front of the pack was tilted up slightly. I forgot to do that on this one. So I'm not going to lift the truck back up again to get it lined up. Instead, what I've done is I've gotten my transmission jack under the front of the pack, and we're just going to jack it up into place. We've got, maybe about 2 inches here to go on the front, give or take. So I'm just going to jack it up, and it should be able to go into position no problem. And that looks perfect right there. So I'm going to go ahead and get those bolts started. I've already got the 2 at the very rear of the pack started as well. And I think I should be able to go ahead and cinch everything down at this point. And then we can go ahead and lift the truck back up and go ahead and start reconnecting everything here, coolant lines, electrical connectors, etc. And then once we're finished with that, we should be able to try and power it up. All right, we've got the pack fully bolted in. All that's left to do now is to go ahead and get everything set up in here. So I am going to get our little angled piece here that all of our connectors attach to bolted back onto the pack. It's just 3 fasteners, if you'll recall. The hard part is just going to be getting them lined up and started, I think. I think once I get 1 or 2, the rest of them should be easy. At least that's the theory, right? All right, I'm going to work on this, and when we're ready to actually start plugging stuff in, I'll bring you back. All right, so we've got our bracket up there bolted on. Now we can actually start plugging stuff in. I guess I need a set of cutters to chop off all the zip ties that I put on there. There's 1. There's 2, 3, and I think that's the last one. Yeah, all this should be pretty straightforward. I did go ahead and clean all the connectors out with just some electrical contact cleaner, just to make sure we don't have any issues with everything going together. I'm pretty sure that these 2 connectors are the same, or at least they're the same connector series that's used on Model 3 as well, which is kind of interesting. They're just TE connectors. It's a fair amount of friction to get those in, so you kind of have to give it a little push and a help along as it's all going together. That one should just push into place and click, click. And then this one was the stiffest by far. Let's see if it'll put up a fight. Oh no, that one might have actually gone together the easiest. And then lastly, we've just got our little low voltage connector here. If I can get it to seat in there. What am I hanging up on? Oh, and I got a phone call. I'll be back. All right, we're back. I'm going to try and get this one plugged in, but this locking lever on it is being awfully stiff. I think the problem is that it's got these little locking tabs on either side, and we have to get those to spread enough that it will actually want to install. Maybe I need to try and get a tool in there to get it to pop loose. Obviously, I don't want to break any tabs. That one is being stubborn. Okay, so we got one side. Can we get the other one? Oh yeah, there we go. Sweet. All right, so that's everything plugged in. We've got our coolant lines here next. So I guess I don't necessarily need the locking tabs right away, but I want to have it at the ready. So there's one coolant line. I'm going to pull this cap off, and hopefully without the battery leaking too much. Let's get that put on. Whoops. Dropped one of those. And I believe this went that way. Yep. That was easy enough. And that is locked in. Okay, we'll do the same on this side. And once again, we'll install a lock on here, just like so. And that is locked on. Very cool. Now all that's really left is we just have our fasteners that clamp all these into place. So let's go ahead and zip all those in real quick. All right, so that's all that stuff done. All that's left is we've just got one ground cable to connect on the back of the pack. And of course we have to put the skid plates and everything on. This pack did come with all the mid skid plates, so we didn't actually have to pull all the ones off the old one, but I wasn't sure if it would come with them or not. So yeah, we just have front and rear skid plates. I'm not gonna do that just yet. I actually wanna drop the truck down and try and power it up and see what we get. And assuming everything works out there, then we should be able to put the rest of this back together. All right, we're fully set up and ready to go. Time to power this thing on. So I'm going to cut my safety zip tie off of our high voltage disconnect, if I can manage to do it one-handed here. There we go. Then we can just plug that back in. Maybe. Do I have to push the tab on it? Oh yeah, there we go. So that's locked in. And push our little red tab there. And lastly, we've just got to reconnect our 12-volt battery. I'm not going to bother tightening this yet. I'm just going to stick it on there. Maybe. There we go. Oh, kind of bent my neck weird there. And let's go ahead and hop in here. Bit of a tight squeeze with the thing on the lift. Parking brakes applied. Let's see what happens if we try to power on. I'm not seeing any alerts here. Truck's reporting 41%, which correlates with what our scan tool said before. It said 40%. Same difference, close enough. Let's try and power on. All right, we're getting ready. Looks like the only alert that I have is frunk ajar, washer fluid low, seat belt, and brake. How do we actually take the parking brake off on this? Like that. Awesome. Let's see what happens if we put it into reverse. It appears to go into reverse. And same for drive. I've got the truck all the way off the ground, so I'm going to let off. And we'll see if we get any movement from the wheels. Okay, it's freaking out for stability control there because it's spinning and not moving. But how about that? We are good to go. This thing is working. So let's go ahead and get everything else buttoned up, and then we can take this for a spin. All right, so I did realize there is one more thing that we need to do here, and we need to purge our air out of the cooling system. I did go ahead and get the skid plates finished underneath. I can't find a specific coolant air purge mode, but I can command the coolant pump on and off. So I'll probably do that, and maybe I'll hunt around a little bit more and see if I can find a specific coolant air purge routine, but it doesn't show up under, if we go back, we're on powertrain control module right now, but like under the hot functions, it doesn't show up there. Maybe it'll show up under service. Powertrain? Nope. Electrical, probably not going to do anything there. Nope. Chassis, we got nothing there. So, yeah, I think that what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to the PCM there. We'll command the coolant pump on, and I'll just probably run it up and down, go, full speed to off, and try and just get all the air out of the system that we can, and hopefully that'll do a sufficient air purge on this thing. All right, I've got the cooling system purged, at least as much as I possibly could. It's time to take this thing for a spin. I think just to start, we're just going to do a short little drive around the block. And before I hand it off to the customer, I do want to take the truck and DC charge it to make sure we have no issues there. Not sure if I'm going to do that tonight or not. I've got an appointment actually that I need to make here later this evening, so we'll just take it on a short little cruise for now. I might have time to try and DC charge it. I probably don't have to leave for my appointment here for probably another 40 minutes or so. So maybe we can go ahead and do that. But let me get it backed out of the shop here, and then we can continue on with the testing. All right, we are cruising along. We'll take this thing for a nice little spin here. On second thought, I don't think that I do have time to actually charge it here tonight. So might have to do that tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, we'll just take it for a little cruise around the block here. So far, it seems like everything's working the way that it should. Throttle response seems good. No alerts popping up on the dash. I do have the scan tool with me, just in case. But I think we're golden. Alrighty, folks, it's the next morning here. And we're headed over to one of the charging stations nearby. I want to plug this thing in, make sure that it charges the way that it should, and assuming we have no issues there, then it should be ready for pickup by the customer, and they should be able to put it right back to work again. All right, so we just got plugged in. It's currently doing its little authentication process there, and it looks like we're charging. Power's ramping up. Let's go ahead and hop in the truck here. Let's see what we've got going. I guess it does not show charge speed, does it? Unless maybe we power it on. Nope, I guess not. Well, we can watch it on the charger there. Still ramping up. 165. Guess that's where it's going to. Yeah, I mean, we didn't really get a chance to precondition. This is just a real short drive here. And it's a little bit chilly out, not super cold, but it is only 55. So we didn't get a good chance to precondition, and we are up to 40%. Although I guess that doesn't matter too much for the boost profile on the Lightning. I guess we'll see maybe if it bumps up. I'm not totally familiar with the whole charge curve on these, but it seems like we're charging the way that it should be. I'm just going to let it sit here and juice up for 10 or 15 minutes or something, make sure that we don't have any faults, and assuming that's the case, then we should be golden. All right, I think we've charged long enough. I've got to pick up another customer at the airport here shortly. Let's go to session details here. So we actually did hit 428 amps, so not quite the full 500 that this should pull. But like I said, we weren't really preconditioned or anything, so I'd say that's pretty solid. We went up to 72% from probably about 38%, I think is what we pulled in with. So yeah, pretty nice increase in capacity there. We'll go ahead and end the charge session here, and we'll head back to the shop. Well, folks, that's going to be it for this one. This is definitely, by far, probably the easiest pack upgrade that I have ever done. Most anything else either requires, at minimum, a firmware redeployment, or programming, or a CAN bridge, or some combination of those things. But this was literally just plug and play. As simple as that, other than the little minor issues with the connectors being damaged on the front of the battery. But as far as the actual pack swap itself went, I mean, it couldn't have gone easier. If I had everything ready to go for one of these, I mean, I could probably do a pack swap in 3 hours, probably pretty easily. And of course, during filming this, actually literally just after I first powered it up for the first time with the new battery in it, I found out that the Lightning's been canceled. So that's a bit of a bummer. I've never personally owned one, but I've always been a fan of the Lightning. And if you watch the Out of Spec Bits channel, you may have seen I joined in there for a bit of a chat with Kyle and a bunch of other Lightning owners. Hopefully the long-term serviceability of these trucks will continue to be good. Ford did build 100,000 of these after all, so I don't anticipate parts supply or anything to be an issue. And even if it were an issue for new parts, you know, say 4 or 5 or 8 years down the road, there's enough of these trucks on the road that used parts should be available for long into the foreseeable future. And of course, now that we know that pack upgrades and stuff are possible on it, that makes things kind of nice from a longevity standpoint. But anyways, that's it for this one. We're going to wrap it up here. And as always, thanks for watching.